The unexpected encounter. Marcus Chun had been walking across the purple grasslands of Kepler 442b for 3 days when she tackled him. One moment he was checking his navigation device and munching on a protein bar. The next moment he was flat, on his back with 150 pounds of muscle and fur pinning him to the ground. The creature above him was unlike anything in the xenobiology textbooks. She had the basic shape of a human woman, but covered in silver-gray fur that caught the light of the twin suns. Her face was elongated like a wolf, with amber eyes that seemed far too intelligent for a wild animal. Sharp canine teeth showed as she panted, and her ears twitched at every sound around them. Marcus tried to stay calm. His training as a frontier explorer had taught him that panicking around unknown species usually ended badly. He kept his hands visible and spoke in a soft voice. "Easy there," he said, his heart pounding. "I don't want any trouble." The creature tilted her head, studying him with those golden eyes. Then she did something completely unexpected. She reached down and carefully took the half-eaten protein bar from his hand. She sniffed it once, then devoured it in 2 quick bites. After finishing his snack, she climbed off him and sat back on her heels, watching him with what looked like curiosity rather than aggression. Marcus slowly sat up, brushing purple grass from his jacket. "So you just wanted my food," he said, more to himself than to her. "That's actually kind of normal behavior for a hungry predator." The creature made a soft chittering sound that might have been laughter. She reached into a pouch made from animal hide that was tied around her waist and pulled out something that made Marcus's eyes widen. It was a perfectly preserved flower, unlike any species he had seen on this planet. The petals were crystalline and seemed to glow with their own internal light. She held it out to him like an offering. Marcus stared at the flower, then at her face. This wasn't random animal behavior. She had tackled him for food, then given him something beautiful in return. That suggested complex social thinking and possibly a concept of fair trade. "Thank you," he said, carefully taking the flower. "It's beautiful." She chittered again, and this time Marcus was sure it was pleased laughter. She stood up, brushed dirt from her fur-covered legs, and trotted away into the grasslands. Marcus watched her go, completely bewildered by the encounter. That night, Marcus made camp near a small stream about 10 kilometers from where the creature had tackled him. He set up his single-person tent, started a small fire for cooking, and pulled out his portable computer to update his mission log. Day 3 of survey mission to abandoned research facility designated K442 Alpha. He spoke into the device. Encountered unknown sapient species. Female, approximately 1.7 meters tall, canine features, covered in fur. Displayed complex social behavior, including apparent gift exchange. No signs of aggression after initial contact. He looked at the crystalline flower, which he had carefully placed in a specimen container. It still glowed faintly in the gathering darkness. Specimen collection indicates advanced knowledge of local flora. Possible tool use suggested by hide pouch. Intelligence level unclear, but definitely above baseline animal cognition. Marcus finished his log entry and heated up a meal packet over his camp stove. The 2 moons of Kepler 442b were rising, casting the grassland in silver light. The night, sounds of the planet began chirping insects, distant calls of bird-like creatures, and the whisper of wind through the strange purple grass. He was just settling into his sleeping bag when he heard it. A soft padding sound, like bare feet walking, carefully through grass. Marcus reached for his flashlight but didn't turn it on. His military training had taught him that announcing your awareness of a potential threat wasn't always the smart move. The footsteps circled his camp once, twice, then stopped. Marcus lay perfectly still, listening. After several minutes, he heard the sound of something heavy settling down just outside his tent dot in the morning. Marcus unzipped his tent to find her curled up next to his camp stove like an oversized dog. She was fast asleep, her chest rising and falling peacefully. Her fur looked silver in the morning light, and he could see old scars crisscrossing her arms and shoulders. Marcus made his morning coffee as quietly as possible. not wanting to wake her. He was studying her sleeping form when her eyes suddenly opened. She looked at him for a moment, made that chittering sound again, and stretched like a cat waking up from a nap. She sat up and pointed to his coffee mug, then tilted her head questioningly. Marcus realized she was asking what he was drinking. Coffee, he said, holding up the mug. It's a stimulant drink from Earth. She reached out tentatively and touched the side of the mug, then jerked her hand back from the heat. Marcus laughed and blew on the coffee to cool it slightly before offering her a small sip. She took the mug carefully in both hands and tasted the coffee. Her face scrunched up in an expression of disgust that was so human-like that Marcus burst out laughing. She handed the mug back and shook her head vigorously, making gagging sounds. Yeah, it's an acquired taste, Marcus said, still. Chuckling, she pointed to herself and made a sound that might have been a name. It sounded like Luna to Marcus's ears. Luna? He asked. Pointing at her dot, she nodded enthusiastically and pointed at him with a questioning expression. Marcus? He said, tapping his chest. Marcus, she repeated slowly, the sound strange, coming from her canine muzzle, but clearly recognizable. They spent the morning in simple communication. Luna showed him which plants were safe to eat and which ones to avoid. She demonstrated how to find clean water by following the behavior of small flying creatures. In return, Marcus shared some of his dried fruit, which she seemed to enjoy much more than the coffee dot as they walked together toward his destination. Marcus began to piece together clues about Luna's past. Her scars were too regular to be from natural predators or accidents. Some of them looked like they came from medical procedures. Her intelligence was clearly far above what a natural evolution would produce in such a short time frame, especially given that the planet had only been discovered 50 years ago. The research facility he was supposed to survey had been abandoned. For 10 years after what the corporate files called budget constraints and changing priorities. Marcus was beginning to suspect there was more to that story. When they reached the facility in the late afternoon, Luna's behavior changed dramatically. She stopped chittering and became tense, her ears flattened against her head. She grabbed Marcus's arm and shook her head, pointing away from the buildings. You don't want me to go in there, Marcus observed. Bad memories. Luna made a low whining sound and pulled at his jacket, trying to lead him away. But Marcus had a job to do. He gently freed himself from her grip and approached the facility's main entrance. The buildings were typical corporate prefab construction, designed to be assembled quickly and abandoned just as easily. Most of the windows were broken and purple. Vines had begun growing up the walls. Marcus found the main door sealed, but his corporate override codes still worked. Inside, the facility was dark and smelled of mildew and abandonment. Marcus turned on his flashlight and began exploring. The main corridor led to what looked like a standard research setup at laboratories, living quarters, and administrative offices. But as he went deeper into the complex, Marcus found rooms that didn't match the official facility description. They were holding cells with reinforced doors, medical equipment designed for large, struggling subjects, and in one room that made his stomach turn, surgical tables with restraints designed for humanoid forms. Luna had followed him inside despite her obvious fear. She stood in the doorway of the surgical room, trembling. Then she walked to one of the tables and placed her hand on it. She looked at Marcus and made a sound that was unmistakably grief. Marcus understood. Luna hadn't just been created here. She had been tortured here. He found the facility's computer system still running on backup power. His corporate access codes gave him entry to most files, but the really interesting data was encrypted. However, Marcus had learned some useful skills during his years as a frontier explorer. Not all of them officially sanctioned, but the files he uncovered told a story that made him angrier with each page. Project Prometheus had been an illegal genetic modification program run by a subsidiary of his own employer, Stellar Development Corporation. They had been trying to create enhanced human soldiers by combining human DNA with genetic material from various alien species. Luna had been Subject 23. According to her file, she had been created 12 years ago using human base genetics enhanced with DNA from a predator species native to a planet in the Vega system. The notes described her as highly intelligent but emotionally unstable, and unsuitable for military applications due to excessive empathy and pack bonding behaviors. The project had been shut down not because of ethical concerns, but because the enhanced subjects were too expensive to maintain and showed troubling signs of independent thought. Most of the subjects have been terminated, but Luna's file showed she had escaped during the facility's final days. She had been living alone in the wilderness for 10 years. Marcus turned off the computer and found Luna sitting outside the building, staring up at the twin moons. He sat down beside her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry they did that to you." Luna looked at him with those intelligent amber eyes, and Marcus saw something in them that broke his heart. She understood exactly what he had said, and she was grateful that someone finally acknowledged her pain. That night, they camped together under the stars. Luna curled up next to Marcus's sleeping bag, and for the first time since meeting her, he felt completely safe on this alien world. She had protected him from dangers he hadn't even known existed, guided him to safety, and now she trusted him enough to sleep peacefully beside him. Marcus stared up at the unfamiliar constellations and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He wasn't going to file the report his corporate masters expected. He wasn't going to pretend Luna was just an interesting animal specimen to be studied and potentially captured. Luna was a person. She had thoughts, feelings, and the right to live free from the people who had created and tortured her. And if that meant Marcus had to choose between his corporate contract and doing what was right, the choice was easy. He reached over and gently touched Luna's fur. She stirred slightly in her sleep and moved closer to him, seeking warmth and comfort. Tomorrow they would figure out what came next. Tonight, they were simply two beings who had found each other in the vast loneliness of space, and that was enough. The bond deepens and threats emerge. Marcus woke to Luna gently shoulder. The twin suns hadn't risen yet, but her enhanced senses had detected something that made her nervous. She was crouched beside his sleeping bag, ears perked and alerts scanning the horizon. "What is it?" Marcus whispered, reaching for his equipment pack. Luna pointed toward the abandoned facility, then cupped her hand to her ear. She was telling him that she heard something coming from that direction. Marcus activated his long-range scanner and felt his blood run cold. 3 aircraft were approaching fast, their energy signatures matching corporate security vessels. Stellar. Development Corporation wasn't supposed to know he had found anything interesting. His last report had been routine, just another survey of an abandoned research station. But somehow they knew, and they were coming with enough firepower to handle any complications. Luna grabbed Marcus's hand and pulled him toward his tent. She helped him pack with surprising efficiency, rolling his sleeping bag and securing his equipment faster than he could have managed alone. Her movements were urgent, but controlled. Like someone who had learned to flee quickly and quietly. Within 10 minutes, they were moving across the purple grasslands, Luna leading the way through terrain that would have been impossible for Marcus to navigate alone. She knew every hidden stream, every cluster of concealing vegetation, every cave that could provide temporary shelter. As they traveled, Marcus began to understand just how remarkable Luna truly was. Her enhanced genetics hadn't just given her physical abilities, they had given her an intuitive understanding of survival that went far beyond anything humans had developed. She could read the landscape like a book, predict weather changes by the behavior of insects, and detect threats long before they became visible. But more than that, she was teaching him. When they stopped to rest, she would show him how to identify edible plants by their scent, how to find water by following the root systems of certain trees, how to move silently across different types of terrain. She was sharing the knowledge that had kept her alive for 10 years in the wilderness. Their communication was improving rapidly, too. Luna had an excellent memory for human words, and she was beginning to string them together into simple sentences. Marcus discovered that she understood far more than she could speak. Her creators had apparently given her subjects extensive neural enhancement along with the physical modifications. Luna, Marcus said during one of their rest stops, why did you help me? When we first met, you could have just taken my food and left. Luna was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Then she looked up at him with those expressive amber eyes. Alone ... too long, she said slowly. Marcus ... kind, not hurt Luna. The simple honesty of her words hit Marcus harder than any complex explanation could have. She had been alone in the wilderness for a decade, probably believing she was the only one of her kind left alive. When she met Marcus, she hadn't just seen a source of food, she had seen the possibility of companionship with someone who wouldn't try to cage her or hurt her. You're not alone anymore, Marcus promised her. I won't let them take you back to a lab. Luna moved closer to him and rested her head against his shoulder. It was a gesture of complete trust that made Marcus's chest tight with emotion. He put his arm around her, marveling at how natural it felt despite their biological differences. They were interrupted by the distant sound of aircraft engines. The corporate security forces were conducting a systematic search of the area, using heat sensors and tracking equipment to hunt for them. Luna lifted her head and sniffed the air, then made a decision. She led Marcus to a cave system hidden behind a waterfall. The caves were deep and cool, with multiple passages that could confuse thermal scanners. But more importantly, they weren't empty as they moved deeper into the cave system. Marcus began to see signs that someone had been living here, carefully organized supplies, sleeping areas, and most surprisingly, walls covered with carved symbols and drawings. Luna, Marcus said, examining the artwork, did you make these? She nodded, looking embarrassed. The drawings showed the history of her people, the laboratory where they had been created, the experiments they had endured, and their eventual escape. But they also showed something Marcus hadn't expected. Luna hadn't been alone all these years. Others? He asked, pointing to drawings that clearly showed multiple figures. Luna's expression became sad. She touched several of the drawings, then made a gesture across her throat. The others hadn't survived. Disease, accidents, or simply the stress of their genetic modifications had claimed them one by one, until Luna was the last. But the caves held more than just artwork. Luna had been collecting things for years, pieces of technology from the abandoned facility, interesting minerals from the planet's geology, and most importantly, detailed maps of the entire continent. She had been preparing for something, though Marcus wasn't sure what as they explored the caves. Marcus began to understand that Luna was far more than just a genetically modified human. Her creators had given her enhanced intelligence, but she had used that intelligence to become something they never intended. Scholar, an artist and a survivor who had turned the wilderness into her home rather than her prison. The sound of aircraft grew closer, and Luna led Marcus deeper into the cave system. They eventually reached a cavern that opened to a hidden valley on the other side of the mountain. It was a natural paradise, with clean water, abundant plant life, and herds of the local herbivore species. Luna's home, she said proudly, gesturing. To the valley, safe here. Marcus was amazed. She had found a location that was invisible from aerial surveillance, provided everything needed for survival, and was far enough from human settlements to avoid accidental discovery. It was the perfect refuge for someone who needed to stay hidden, but their moment of peace was shattered by the whine of approaching engines. The corporate security forces had found the cave entrance, and they were moving in with full military equipment. Dr. Marcus Chen. A voice echoed from speakers mounted on the aircraft. This is Security Chief Thompson with Stellar Development Corporation. We know you're in there, and we know you're not alone. Come out now, and we can discuss this reasonably. Marcus recognized the voice. Thompson was notorious throughout the frontier settlements for his ruthless methods and complete loyalty to corporate interests. If he was here personally, it meant Luna was considered a valuable asset worth recovering at any cost. They want to take you back, Marcus said to Luna. They think you're corporate property. Luna's expression hardened. She had lived free for 10 years, and she wasn't going back to being someone's experimental subject. She looked at Marcus with determination that made him proud and terrified at the same time. Luna not property, she said firmly. Luna is Luna. The security forces were entering the caves now, their heavy boots echoing through the passages. They had tracking equipment and weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill. They wanted Luna alive, but Luna knew these caves better than anyone. She led Marcus through passages so narrow they had to crawl, across underground streams that would mask their scent, and finally to a ledge that overlooked the main cavern where the security team was searching. Marcus watched the corporate soldiers. With growing anger, they moved through Luna's home like they owned it, destroying her artwork and scattering her carefully organized supplies. They talked about her like she was a piece of missing equipment rather than a person. There, Luna whispered, pointing to a section of the cave wall. Old tunnel. Goes to ship landing place. Marcus understood. The original research facility had been built near a natural landing pad that could accommodate spacecraft. If they could reach it, Marcus's ship might still be there, along with their chance to escape the planet entirely. But getting there would mean leaving Luna's Valley, the only real home she had known since escaping the laboratory. Marcus could see the pain in her eyes as she looked around the caves one last time. Luna, he said softly, we don't have to. Run forever. There are places in the galaxy where people like you can live free. Frontier worlds where nobody asks too many questions about your genetics or your past. She looked at him with hope for the first time since the security forces had arrived. Marcus and Luna ... together. If you want that, Marcus said. Partners. Equals. No more hiding. No more running scared. Luna smiled, showing her sharp canine teeth. It was the first truly happy expression Marcus had seen from her, and it made his decision feel completely right. They made their way through the old tunnel, moving slowly to avoid detection. Behind them, they could hear the security forces spreading out through the cave system, calling for them to surrender. Thompson's voice echoed through the passages, promising fair treatment and comfortable accommodations. Marcus and Luna both knew what corporate fair treatment meant for someone like. When they reached the landing pad, Marcus's ship was exactly where he had left it, though it now had several security drones circling it. Luna studied the drones for a moment, then made a sound that Marcus had learned meant she had an idea. She disappeared into the brush surrounding the landing pad and returned with a handful of crystalline flowers like the one she had first given Marcus. But these were different. They pulsed with energy that made Marcus's scanner readings spike dramatically. Electromagnetic pulse flowers, he realized. Luna, you're brilliant. She threw the flowers at the security drones with perfect accuracy. When they impacted, the drone systems overloaded, and they crashed to the ground in showers of sparks. The path to Marcus's ship was clear. They ran across the landing pad together, Luna moving with inhuman speed and grace while Marcus pushed himself to keep up. Behind them, security forces were emerging from the cave system, shouting orders and firing stun weapons that missed their rapidly moving targets. Marcus got his ship's engine started while Luna sealed the hatch. As they lifted off, Thompson's voice came over the communication system one last time. Chun, you're making a mistake. That creature is corporate property, created with company resources. You're stealing valuable assets. Marcus looked at Luna, who was staring out the viewport at the planet that had been her prison and her home. She had risked everything to help. Trusted him with her freedom, and chosen to leave the only safe place she had ever known because she believed in the possibility of something better. Thompson, Marcus said into the communicator, I'm not stealing anything. I'm helping a person choose their own life. He cut the communication and engaged the ship's faster-than-light drive. As Kepler 442b disappeared behind them, Luna pressed her face to the viewport watching the stars change from points of light to streaks of energy as they entered hyperspace. Where now? She asked. Marcus pulled up a star chart showing the frontier territories. Worlds where humans and aliens lived together without asking too many questions about anyone's past. Places where a genetically enhanced woman and the explorer, who had chosen her freedom over his corporate career, could build a new life together. Anywhere we want, Marcus said. The galaxy is full of places that need explorers who aren't afraid of the unknown. Luna looked at the star chart, then at Marcus. Her amber eyes were bright with possibilities that stretched across light years of space. Luna and Marcus, she said, testing out the sound of their names together. Partners. Partners, Marcus agreed, setting course for a frontier world where they could start over, as their ship flew through hyperspace toward an uncertain but promising future. Luna curled up in the co-pilot's seat and fell asleep with her hand resting trustingly on Marcus's arm. He looked at her peaceful face and knew that whatever adventures lay ahead of them, they would face them together. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and they had all the time in the universe to explore it.